Sorry. Yeah. So a follow-up question on that would be, uh, do you see a trend that successful practices are investing in certain kind of uh, things, right? For example, where it could be uh, instruments, it could be marketing, it could be certain kinds of trainings. So do you see a trend across successful practices on what kind of investments they are making in the practice?
Yeah, that's a good question too. And what I would say to all of it is strategic investments, right? So there you see some practices that throw money at marketing and they think, well, I'm spending money on marketing, it should bring me new patients uh, and that may or may not be the case. The key is being strategic about it. And you could speak to that better than I could, Harsh. But same thing with equipment. And I have clients that when we do tax planning and we before we get into strategies and such, we'll do the projection and show them this is what you're trending toward having to owe next year. And and there are some clients that say, okay, well, I'll just buy a bunch of equipment and we'll work that down. And you can do that. Equipment is a tax strategy, but you never want to buy equipment and spend $1 to save 30 cents or 40 cents or whatever your tax bracket is. That makes zero sense, right? Don't let the tax tail wag the dog, right? And so that's not strategic, but successful practices do upgrade their equipment and they have the latest and greatest that are use that is going that they can have useful useful implementation for. So they buy it when they are ready to use it and to be successful with it. They're not buying a bunch of equipment just to save on taxes, but they're strategic about those upgrades. Um, you know, if it's a milling machine, how many crowns are you doing? How much use do you have for that milling machine? How much more collection revenue is that going to add to your top line versus the cost? If you're just trying it out, that's not very strategic. Um, and things like that. So just being strategic with your investments is what I would say is key.
So, since you mentioned investments, let's say there's a dental practice that's, doing average. But I think, was looking into the research, and like one of the very key trends that we're seeing in the industry today is smaller practice kind of selling it to a large DSO or a private equity firm, backed, group practices or something like that. So on a financial point of view, like when should they do that?
Mm. When to sell to a DSO or when to sell, period.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a great topic, and it's from a financial perspective, it's usually, well, DSOs are all over the place, right? We see some DSOs that just were not managed well. They were over leveraged, buying too many practices, and now they're in financial trouble. Um, if you're looking at a DSO transaction, it really depends on who you go with and how confident you are in their success, because ultimately you're partnering with them. From a financial standpoint, understand before you sell to a DSO that you're giving up the profits of your practice, and that's why they're buying you. That's why they're willing to throw money at you, is they want your profits. So you're giving that up in exchange for money now. So if you're selling at age 40, you're giving up the profits that you're earning for the rest of your career. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, but just understand that. And and then depending on who you go with in a DSO transaction, typically the cash up front, and there's some form of equity that you're going to get, some type of partnership either in your practice or in the DSO as a whole. And that part is the biggest unknown because typically you're not able to see the financial data that goes into their valuation of their equity. And so you have to do some outside homework and talk to people to know how good you feel. And the people that are turning dentists down, that's a good sign. And the people that are offering the biggest cash up front, that could be a bad sign. Because that just shows that they're in it more to buy your profits, and a lot of times they can over leverage themselves with that cash up front and put themselves in bigger financial trouble. And then there's some type of holdback or earn out, and that's another part of it. But the biggest unknown is the equity. But the other thing you'd need to evaluate. So one is if you sell too early, you know that you're giving up the profits for the rest of your career in your practice. So if you consider a DSO that's going to offer you, let's just say they're going to offer you, for easy math, let's just say it's 2 million. Now, most DSOs are a lot more than that they're going to throw at you. But let's say you could sell it in a private sale for $1 million. And again, just easy math. These are not real numbers. If you work for 5 more years and then sell to a private seller and then walk away, you get your $1 million, plus you get your profits over those 5 years, whatever they are. If they're $500,000 a year, you've made, in the course of 5 years, you've earned $2.5 million plus your $1 million. That's $3.5 million that you got from the deal. If you sell to the DSO and you get your $2 million now, you're giving up that $500,000 now. You'll probably get wages as you work back for the DSO for 5 more years, but you're not going to make nearly as much in wages as you do in profits. So a lot of times, if you wait it out and sell in a private transaction, you can make more money than you can in a DSO, or at least have a clearer picture of what you're getting. Because then you're keeping the profits for that time, and then you're just selling it for cash and walking away. The DSO, you really just need to know who you're going into business with and understand that you're giving up your profits.
I'm gonna flip the question a bit. This was very, very helpful. But let's say a viewer is a DSO. For them, what kind of private practice would make sense for them to acquire? Like, what would be a good candidate for them financially?
Well, DSOs typically know what they want to acquire, and they typically have a pretty dialed in picture of what they want. Most DSOs don't want to look at you if you're under $1 million in collections. And a lot of them, they're looking for 2 million and above, from what I understand. And so that's one. And then EBITDA, and the profitability percentage, they're going to be looking at that too. If you're running at 20% profitability, that's probably not going to look so good. But if you're running at 50%, 60%, you're going to have DSOs that are going to be interested. You're going to have options for who you can sell to.
Right. With that being said, that was a great answer. And to that, a lot of DSOs, not only DSOs, but there are private offices who decide, okay, my third and fourth location, I'm just going to start a location and run it for like 3 years, and I'm going to sell it. But they do ask this question that, okay, what is the best business structure for my dental practice? Is there an answer? Is it a C corp? Is it an S corp? Is it an LLC? Right? Because they have decided, and there are dentists who decide that, okay, I just want to run this location for 3 years or 4 years. I want to make 2 million out of it, right? And then I want to sell it, right? But do you have like is that a valid question that is there a best structure like which
Yeah.
dentists can use?
Yeah, and I have to caveat that I'm advising from a tax standpoint, not
Right.
from a legal standpoint. They're two different things. An attorney can better advise on the overall legal structure and the risk protection from a legal perspective. But from a tax perspective, generally S corp is the best. But it can depend, and a lot of people don't fully understand what an S corp is. An S corp is an election that's made with the IRS on how you're taxed. There's no legal structure that's an S corp. It's only a tax election. So you can be an LLC, you can be a corp. However you're structured, you can elect to be taxed as an S corporation with the IRS. So that's one key point. It doesn't change your state legal registration to elect to be taxed as an S corp. Um, so a lot of people do LLCs and then elect to be taxed as an S corp. Now in states like California, a dental practice can't be an LLC. It's got to be a corp. So things like that. But generally S corp is the best structure from a tax perspective. And the reason why is if you're an LLC that's not an S corp, let's say you're just single owner, that would be the simplest because the LLC would not have to file a separate tax return. It just reports everything on your personal tax return. But the problem is you get hit with self-employment tax. And that's an extra 15.3% on the first about 170,000 of profit. Then after that, it's still another 2.9, and then it goes up to 3.8% after 250,000. So that's just additional taxes on top of your income taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So and then a C corp it's a flat 21% tax bracket for federal income taxes. So that's nice. But the problem with a C corp is when you take distributions from it, you pay tax on that money again. So it's double taxed. So you don't want to pay taxes twice. S corp is really the best of both worlds. You don't have to pay self-employment tax on S corp profits, and you're not double taxed when you take distributions. The only catch is you've got to pay yourself a reasonable wage. Most people understand this, although not everyone knows, and there's debate, what's a reasonable wage? And we can talk about that, but S corp is the best structure for most dental practices. Now, and sorry for rambling, but if you own real estate, you do not want to have that in your S corp. And that's why most people have a separate LLC. Anything that's in a corp, whether it's an S corp or a C corp, any appreciating asset, if you at any point have to, restructure, move things around, or make something personal use, you move it out of the corp, that becomes a taxable event, even if you don't receive any money. It's treated as if you sold that asset. And that's why you don't want to have real estate in an S corp, because if you have to move it around at any point, it's treated as if you sold that real estate and you've got a taxable gain, even though you didn't actually sell it. So just beware that's the some of the traps and things that you need to be aware of.
So we spoke about what do dentists need to see when they're selling. Let's just reverse that and ask what do they need to look at when they're buying? Start from scratch or buying a practice? How do you decide? And what are the things that they should be looking for?
Yeah, that's a good question too. And I'm going to say that I don't know all the answers with all this, right?
Yeah.
But you're looking for good value. What's the potential? And most private dental practices, I think, are going for about 80% of collections, give or take. If you can get a practice for less than that, that looks good. You might be getting a good deal, but you need to understand why it's selling for less. I was talking to someone just today, actually, that is buying a practice for a little over $400,000. Very low price for a dental practice. And but he elaborated why it's going for so low is because payroll is out of control, supplies are out of control, and no one wanted to buy it. He had to come down by over $200,000 on his asking price, which is a significant portion of what he was asking. And so you need to just know what you're buying, and if it's going, you can pay more than 80% for a dental practice. If you've done enough homework to know that you can grow this, and you also need to think about that you're buying it's an investment, it's your livelihood, but it's not just a job that you're buying. You're not just paying X so that you can get X every year, or you get Y every year. You're paying X so that you can make that 2X or 10X or whatever you want to do, but I don't think any business investment is worth it if you can't grow it. And so understanding the potential, what the trend has been, how loyal the patient base is to the doctor, if that doctor is going to leave or the patient's going to walk, what's the patient flow, what's the demographic of the area? Is it a growing population area? What's the income trends? Is this an up and coming area where people are moving in and they have decent incomes, or is this an area that's suffering from economic just struggles? And not that you can't buy a practice in those areas either, but it's going to look different than the type of practice that you're going to be buying in Beverly Hills versus Detroit, right? Totally different type of demographic, and you're going to, depending on what type of practice you want to run, if you want to have a fee-for-service practice that drives a lot of cosmetic and high dollar services, that's all fee-for-service, then you're not going to want to touch the practice in Detroit. Versus if you like doing the Medicaid work and high volume, then you can look at those types of practices. So anyway, it kind of looks different. So I don't know if I fully answered
No,
that question, but it really depends on a lot of different factors.
You know,
fair enough.
So I think all the conversations we had are really, really, relevant when it comes to the things that are like traditionally, should be followed. But one thing I think I want to kind of start the conversation about is also the future in terms of the trends, right? So since we're all here and we're all somewhere, associated with technology, like, Harsh being like this marketing guy using AI technology, or us, we are managing appointment management and scheduling with AI technology for staffing issues, or Nishant, who is actually supporting and onboarding that technology to the dental clients. I think in since the webinar, or sorry, the podcast is about the 2025 trends and the playbook. I'm really curious to understand what are the emerging trends and the technological innovations that you are seeing in your dental clients, and how is it separating, like, from the ones who are using it to the ones who are not.
Yeah. Well, I have seen a lot of technology. As I mentioned, I was there for the beginnings of Dental Intel. And so before Dental Intel, I don't think there was a whole lot of the technology. I mean, you had your patient management system. You could print out reports. But the information that is there now, and there's new cloud-based patient management systems that have the analytics that are just popping out all over the place. And all the technology that you guys provide, there's so much. You need to you need to embrace technology, and you need to kind of know what your options are. But yeah, I've seen there's definitely changes coming in technology that I've seen.
Do you think that these changes are impacting the financials too in any way?
Yeah, they are. It's a blessing and a curse, right? So technology has a cost to it, a cost that people didn't have to pay before. Um, and so again, it comes back to being strategic. And so if you have, if you have your patient management system, if you have your website, if you have, your HR function, your um and all the technology that you have, if you have a dental intel or some kind of analytics like that, that can be a blessing or a curse. It's gonna have a cost to it, first of all. So it can either just be a cost, or it can be an accelerator to drive more income. If you're using that technology strategically, managing all those things and looking at them regularly, you're going to use it to drive better business. So it's either a blessing or a curse. You just got to use it effectively, efficiently, and often.
And great point brought by Simran. I mean, we've been leveraging AI with the help of Confido and Remedo with our clients, and that has been fantastic for our clients. They've been very happy. But when we talk about taxes and all those things, how does Drill Down Solutions approach building relationships and maintaining these relationships with their dental clients? I mean, how is the communication? Like, I mean, I understand during the tracks like season, it's going to be way more, but like, how do you generally communicate? Like, how do you build and maintain relationships with your clients?
Yeah, that's great. Because my business, and same with dental, it's all a personal relationship. Um, so, I mean, we have certain things that are streamlined and automated for during tax season. We're sending out organizers to our clients, and that's a less interactive face-to-face type of communication. But we're sending those out in an efficient way so that we can get the information and get tax returns done. But when it comes to tax planning, like I said, we proactively schedule those meetings with our clients, and we're sitting down face to face, usually over Zoom, and looking at the numbers together. Now we've done a projection for what their taxes are going to be, and we've identified strategies typically before the meeting. But most of the time, everything changes during the meeting as we're talking with our clients, because the client really understands what they're expecting the future to be better than we do. And so we have historical data. They can fill us in with gaps. Well, I'm actually going to be out of town for 2 weeks in December, in the first part of December, um, or something like that, or that we had this or that, and that's going to impact this. And so we tweak the projection, and then talking through those strategies is very personal. It's not a one size fits all. I have some clients that want to be aggressive. If there's a way to get a tax reduction, they want to do it, even if they know that's going to open them up for risk of IRS audits. And we would never do something that we feel is illegal or dishonest. I'll just make that clear. But then I have other clients that we present these strategies, and we let them know that they can save huge amounts of money, and they'll say thanks but no thanks, because there's a chance that they could be audited, and they don't want to take that risk, and that's okay. I don't fault them for wanting to avoid risks. Our goal is to put our clients in the best financial position possible, which may look differently for different people. For some, it's lowering that tax as much as possible. For some, it's avoiding the risk. And that ultimately gives them peace of mind. Financial success is really just a tool to give them whatever else they want. And peace of mind is one of those things that we help with. So it's very personal, and it's not a one size fits all, and it's different for everyone.
I have one question which is like slightly different than what Nishant was asking, and goes back to the initial point that we were discussing. You said some of the practices which are struggling to thrive, you saw a high, let's say, high percentage of payroll. What are the other functions where you saw that, practices which are struggling apart from payrolls, which are the places where they struggle most with overspending on that?
Yeah. Supplies is another one that can get out of hand. And so just knowing who you're buying from and buying at the right time. You don't want to keep a stockpile of supplies that you don't need until you need them, but at the same time, you don't want to be running out of what you need. So that takes just some good management of that and knowing who you're working with. But honestly, payroll is the biggest thing that drives a practice out of hand in terms of cost.
I'm sure Nishant can help with supplies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. That answers my question.
All right. But I think, Stephen, all the answers that you gave, really, I think it felt like we were sitting in this in-person private lecture, and all of us learned so much. We've also been in this industry, and of course, even have our own taxes and, accounting to do, and also work with the dentist who often, communicate us about this. But this was so invaluable. I do, want to take the time and ask you this one last question, which is, for all the viewers, what are the last few advices and the most crucial advice you'd like to give to the dentist viewers? And also, since the tax season is on, at the corner, are there any advice related to the taxing and the taxation side of it as well?
Oh, that's some loaded questions there. Last parting advice. I talk a lot about financial related things, taxes or profitability, things like that, which you need to manage your practice and things like that. But be true to yourself. Know what you want. Some people want to grow their dental practices as much as possible and add practices and are very entrepreneurial oriented. And some people are content with their livelihood and their 3-op practice, and that can be okay too. Be true to yourself, but definitely don't lose sight of the financial side of things and do your best to grow it, because if you lose sight of keeping the value of your practice to its potential, it's sad when a dentist gets ready to retire and he's kind of stopped pushing for several years, and the value it has diminished over the last few years, and he can't sell it for what he could have had he sold it 5-10 years before. So just be aware of that pitfall, but be true to yourself, what you want out of life, what you want out of your career, and things like that. As far as tax planning, like I said, it's not a one size fits all. If we had more time, that's really a whole topic in of itself, and that's what I do. But and in terms of tax season, now is the tax filing season. Now that the year is over, there's not as much you can do. There are some things you can do. You can contribute to certain retirement funds, and you can contribute to a health savings account. But the biggest takeaway with tax planning is you've got to do it throughout the year. You can't wait till the end of the year to do it. I prefer to have tax planning done for my clients. Now we're tax planning all through December, but preferably before December, the tax plan is dialed in to where we have the roadmap, we know the strategies that we want to do, we've introduced you to all the right players, and there's still some time to act and get it all done before, and then you can settle down for the holidays, for the Christmas season and for New Year's, and have that